James Cameron's Avatar movies. I can say I'm a fan, and I've always been a fan. I remember back in 2009 when I was a young lad, the first Avatar film came out, and at the time I was still back on Earth, and I was working at this cinema chain, and it was opening weekend of the original Avatar. And I just remember my first shift was being on the ticket booth and watching this literal, no joke, wall of people come around the corner because work had finished and they were all coming to watch Avatar. And I just remember sitting there going, oh my god, because I was only young and I was like, oh, this is going to be crazy. And so they literally just taught me how to use the machine, and then yeah, it was like go go go. But because I worked at the cinema, you get free cinema tickets, so I ended up seeing the original Avatar like 8 or 9 times, I think, or maybe 7 or 8, maybe around there, in its original run, because there was really nothing else on at the time. I remember there was Robert Zemeckis' Christmas Carol with Jim Carrey, that was out, and I did see that, but Avatar was the big spectacle movie, and I actually really enjoyed it so much I could go back and keep watching it. I have never really done a review of the original Avatar online, so this will be my like kind of brief little overview of the original film before we go into the new one. But the original Avatar movie, I remember really, really liking it when it came out, and I still do to this day, and I think it's really held up. I think visually it's held up, even though it came out so long ago, in 2009. But the technical wizardry that was going on behind the camera, that's where the magic of Avatar was really happening, because you watch the first film, and yes, the story is covering ground we've already seen before in other stories, but that could be said about a lot of things. And when I see lots of comparisons to things like Dances with Wolves or Fern Gully or Pocahontas, and you line all those films up with Avatar, and you go, which one are you going to watch? I'm like, well, out of all these type of stories, I'm going to pick Avatar because it's got giant monster dinosaurs that live on another planet. You've got mechs, you've got huge wars with dragons fighting helicopters, and knife fights with mechs and giant blue aliens, and yeah, that's the one I'm going to go for, over like a cartoon talking raccoon or whatever in Pocahontas. Don't get me wrong, they're good films, Pocahontas, Dance with Wolves, and I think Fern Gully, I haven't watched it in years, but Avatar is my kind of taste, appeals to my palate. But yeah, so I get this sense, I've got this assumption that James Cameron was basically focusing on the technical wizardry behind the camera, as I mentioned before, over the story. So he picked a very sort of simple plot, and then could focus on the actual making of the original Avatar. So I could see that and appreciate it when watching the film, because I remember watching it opening weekend, and everyone was talking about how like, oh, you feel like you're there, the 3D is so good, and I was a bit skeptical of that. But then when sat down, there was this one shot where right near the beginning of the film, Jake Sully is walking through the forest. He's just got lost from his team, and the way James Cameron moves the digital camera in this world, he like dipped it down slightly, like you're almost walking along with Jake, and as this fern goes over the camera, and it got me. I genuinely was sat there looking, and I was like, I feel like I'm not looking at a screen anymore, I'm actually looking into the world, and that I was hooked from there, in terms of not 3D. I'm not like a massive 3D film buff, but I understood what it could do if in the right hands, and that's what the original Avatar did for me. And yeah, I loved all the characters. Quaritch was a standout one as a villain. I loved the design of everything. I thought the way they built this world was incredible. The only thing actually I didn't like about the original Avatar, and it sounds like a nitpick, but I actually think it's kind of a fundamental thing, it's like they spent all this time designing these wonderful creatures and planets and robots and everything else, but then they just, as a Jurassic Park fan, they give the big Thanator, or whatever it's called, that big puma dinosaur T-Rex thing, they give it the Tyrannosaurus Rex roar from Jurassic Park. And I've noticed in the sound design across the original Avatar, they use King Kong's roar. They use a roar that they use for The Land Before Time for Sharptooth, the T-Rex. They use the Velociraptor noises, which are, I think they're tortoises having sex, but they're the honking sound of the Velociraptors from Jurassic Park for some of the horses. And I was sat there thinking, well, you've spent all this time designing visually this kind of unique looking world, but 50% of the experience is sound. So when it comes to the monsters and that, there was moments where they took me out of it by having a very already used sound. It sounded kind of like stock sounds rather than them coming up with something like a bit more interesting and alien sounding. But that was my only real gripe with the first one. But yeah, love the first Avatar, still do. I'm really looking forward to getting it on 4K because the Blu-ray still holds up. I've got a big 4K TV on another level of the Terradome where I watch stuff, and the Blu-ray of Avatar holds up, but the 4K, I'm really excited to see what that's going to look like. I just hope that they don't put on the 4K release the Disney Plus edited down version where they remove I think it's in the scene where Neytiri and Jake are having sex and they stick their head tentacles together and she moans. Yeah, so I hope that the 4K release is the full un-Disneyfied version, let's put it that way. So now let's talk about the new one. That's why you come here, right? The Avatar Way, the Way of Water. Avatar Way of the Water? Way of the Water? The Way of the Water? Avatar The Way of Water. It's a bit of a clunky title. But yeah, so this is going to come in two parts. The first one is my initial thoughts when I saw it the first time, and then I'll tell you about the second time I saw it, which was last night. So I'll go into my tweet thread that I put up on Twitter, and I'm just going to read this to you first before I do anything else. I saw the first Avatar 8 times at the cinema, partly because I worked there at the time, but mainly because I was blown away by the filmmaking regardless of the simple plot, which is what I summed up a minute ago. After seeing Avatar The Way of Water, I think once is enough. I didn't hate it, but I wasn't overly hooked by it. I think the world building, visuals and spectacle was all achieved for me with the first film, and so this new one basically made me realise I was done with Avatar at the end of film 1. Saying that, Avatar The Way of Water is worth a watch at least once on the big screen. We went to an Odeon Lux, so I had recliner seats, which are a must-have for a 3-hour plus movie. Yeah, Odeon Lux. Very, very, very good. If you don't know what they are, they just have these recliner seats. You have your little thing, little table you pull round, and there's enough legroom that if your feet are stretched completely out, people can still pass you and go to the toilet without you having to even move. But then I slept on it, and the next day I said, after sleeping on it, I will say I haven't stopped thinking about it, mainly due to the amount of unanswered threads which breed curiosity. There was a lot I liked with the sequel, and I'm game to see where they go with number 3, but we'll stew on my opinion of 2 for a while, I think. Those crab mechs were badass. So yes, so initially I was a bit disappointed. There was and I'm going to go into spoilers here, okay? So if you haven't watched the films, I'm just going to go completely into spoilers. So there's a new story thread in the new film where you find out Quaritch had a son called Spider, and that he agreed to have his memories put on this thing. Then they could implant his mind and memories into a new avatar that was being grown on Earth at the time of the first film, and so then he's gonna go and fight Jake at the end of the first film, but they're gonna be secretly growing an avatar version of him just in case he dies, which we know he did. This is like a fundamental pillar of the plot of the new film, and when I first watched the movie, I didn't buy it. I was like, when I watched Avatar 1, I don't get Quaritch as a family man. I never got the sense that he had a son or like a baby that he's meant to care for on the base anywhere. And I didn't like the idea of him agreeing to become an avatar to begin with, because in the first film he's constantly berating Jake about betraying his race and not being a real Na'vi, and that the avatar is basically just like a skin suit, which it is, and that he's human and all this sort of stuff. So it kind of felt a bit strange for me to think that he agreed to do that because as a fallback plan. But I will say this: watching the film for a second time, I got it a bit more, because I feel like they're leaving some details out ready for the next film. So we don't know who Quaritch's other half was or who Spider's mum was. There's a lot of stuff for them to explain, which hopefully will make the links to film 1 a bit more cohesive for me. I'm still a little bit like, he agreed to become an Avatar? All right then. But I bought into it more watching it a second time. So the story actually was, well, it's safe to say I enjoyed the film a lot more the second time. To go so far as to say I think it's as good as number 1 in terms of my appreciation for the film as it is. So at the moment, you know, Avatar 1 is here, Avatar 2 is here. They are pretty good, but Avatar 2 is a little bit more wobbly just based on its connections to number 1, because when you now go back and watch Avatar 1, I'm going to be sitting there thinking he's now going to go fight Jake, this massive battle, and he's just agreed to have an avatar made of him, plus he has a baby somewhere on the base. So I don't know what's going on there. So I hope they give some better backstory as these films go on, and I know they've filmed number 3 already, so fingers crossed that they actually do go into that a bit more. Not a lot, they just need to make more sense for film 1, basically, if they want to make them feel more cohesive. I think the story, like I said, was hinged on this thing that I didn't really buy at the beginning, but over time I've come to appreciate it watching it a second time and thinking on it. It's a simple plot, which is fine because the first one had a simple plot, and I was still blown away by the spectacle of how the film looks. I think the CGI is monumental. The motion capture is amazing. The water effects are just incredible because a lot of this film takes place on water, so that's a whole different kettle of fish, pun not intended, to appreciate in terms of artistry. You know, seeing how the water moves and reacts to the characters and all that sort of stuff. So that I really enjoyed, but kind of like I said in my tweet thread, that the spectacle of those effects has kind of been, you know, it wasn't as spectacular as seeing the first one, but that's because the first one was the first one. It did it first. So watching this new one, it did feel cohesively like it looked very similar to the first film. So it flowed nicely in terms of visuals. So that I liked. It didn't look strikingly different. So the first one ages badly. It actually kind of fits the first one quite nicely. But then again, I'm saying this now, when Avatar The Way of Water comes to home media and I can compare the two, maybe the first one will start to look a bit more janky as time goes on. But yeah, I couldn't really notice it watching the new one at the cinema. It kind of just looked like we were flowing straight on from film 1 into the new one visually. The music I felt like wasn't as impactful as the first one, and it was actually rather jarring to hear a lot of the score from the first Avatar by James Horner. I don't know the name of the person who did the new one, but the off memory, but the music it serviced the story well enough, but it didn't have anything that stood out. The only things that actually stood out were the music from the first one, but that actually annoyed me. I was like, it felt like it needed a new, completely fresh take on the music. The teaser trailer that came out for Avatar The Way of Water had this very sort of atmospheric just music basically for the teaser trailer, and that I loved, and that set up what I was kind of expecting music wise from the movie. I need to listen to the score isolated from the film, I think, to maybe appreciate it a bit more, which I will do, because I love film scores, so I'll listen to that aside from when I'm working and stuff. But yeah, so maybe I'll come to appreciate it over time, but at the moment I can't remember anything from the score. Like when I came out of the first film, I remember humming the da 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 da. Like I could have the film score in my mind because I was a huge James Horner fan as well, so I was like listening to the themes. I was like, oh, this is great, but this new one, I don't know, I was like, it just didn't have that magic to it in terms of the score. Characters, I think all the characters were great. No issues there. I think all the actors were great. I think on my initial watch, Quaritch, I really like Quaritch. Quaritch is great, but on my initial watch, I said I kind of wish he was a completely new character, but he is technically a new character, but like a new character as in he wasn't Quaritch who was agreeing to go on the Avatar program. He was like a whole new character who agreed to do that in the event of Quaritch's death because Quaritch refused to do it or something like that. So you have a whole different like mean general. However, watching it a second time, I really loved that it was Quaritch. It was just, I could see the parallels between him and Jake in the first film, and I could see what Cameron was doing by remaking the first film, but sort of flipping it around and doing different things. Kind of like how he had the Terminator in Terminator 2 be good, you know, Arnold's character being good rather than bad like he was in the first one. So it's kind of like the flip of that. So I really did enjoy that. The standout character for me actually was, I believe the character's called Kiri. Played by Sigourney Weaver, the teenage character, and I feel like she is a character that I'm gonna like going into the next film, because they set loads of things up in this one that I'm really curious about, and she was just a really likable character. So yeah, I really like that character above everyone else. The character of Neytiri in this one, on my initial watch, I was like, oh, they're making me not like Neytiri. She's too angry. She didn't have many scenes of like her being overly happy, but that makes sense when you watch it again and again. You kind of notice, well, yeah, of course, she's just been ripped from her home. They have a lot of they really appreciate their sort of ancestral ties and all that sort of stuff. She's been ripped from that, so I get it. But there is still one sticking point which I had on my initial watch. Neytiri looks at Spider, which is the son of Quaritch, who's been living amongst her kids and is kind of like a, as Jake Sully puts it, a feral cat on the planet. And he's a human boy. She looks at him as an alien. She doesn't like him, basically. And obviously, as the film plays out, she grows. Well, by the end of the movie, she's got a knife to his throat and she's threatening to kill him in front of Quaritch. And I feel like there needed to be a reveal that he was Quaritch's son, which made Neytiri then freak out, because at the end of Avatar 1, the Neytiri's character, she didn't like humans to begin with, but by the end of the movie, she looks past that and sees Jake. That's why the whole point of that end shot of her holding human Jake in her hand and saying, I see you, the whole point is that is they're looking past their, you know, species, not that they're seeing each other, and there's like true love kind of thing. But in the new film, she looks at Spider and is instantly like, he's a human, he's a demon, he's one of them. And it's like, you married one of those. Like, it's like, I get that he's like the son of Quaritch, but to have that, like, they already know that he's the son of Quaritch, but I think it could have been nice to have a moment where she trusts Spider, like playing with her kids and all this sort of stuff, and it's built up, and then there's a discovery that she finds out, and then she's like, oh, I don't know, no, this is, I shouldn't have let him get too close. You know, he's going to compromise all this, and then Jake can use it, you know, himself as like a, well, you trusted me and blah blah blah. So yeah, they could have been something there that they did, but yeah, it's kind of a tiny nitpick. But I just, as soon as like Neytiri didn't like Spider right from the beginning of the film, I was like, I thought the point of Avatar 1 was that she got over that kind of prejudice. But anyway, whatever. What else can I talk about? The design of the film's great. They didn't actually use any Jurassic Park sounds, luckily, for anything. As far as I could tell, all the new animals underwater and stuff, they all had their unique alien sounding stuff. That obviously they sound a little bit like whales or dolphins, but they did enough to make it not take you out of the movie if you're someone like me who listened to the first film and was like, that's just the T-Rex from Jurassic Park sound you're using. And the design of stuff, like I said in my tweet thread, the crab mechs are awesome. They're just, James Cameron knows how to do cool robots, so he knocked out of the park with that. And there's a great parallel where this giant ship is hunting a whale, and it like overturns, and they kill the whale, and then later on that big ship gets killed and then overturns, and it's kind of like a parallel to what happened with the whale. And I kind of liked all that sort of stuff. The design of that ship was really cool. And I've got a little bit of James Cameron's love of water and lagoon pools and all that sort of stuff in stories. So I loved seeing all like the ship going down, and you know the disorientation of when they're trapped in the ship and it's like rolling, and they're going through the cafeteria along the roof, but the water's coming. Love all that kind of stuff. But yeah, so I think that's as much as I can talk about right now in terms of Avatar. I would say right now then, Avatar and Avatar The Way of Water are equal footing. I both love them. I don't really give ratings, but I just say they're equal footing. And I'm hearing that the next one is going to deal with some sort of fire tribe or something in the next Avatar movie, which luckily we don't have to wait 13 years for. Should be coming out, I believe, 2024. And James Cameron has said that we're going to sympathise a little bit more with the humans, and we're going to see sort of a darker side of the Na'vi, which I'm all for, because we've had 2 movies now where the humans are just assholes, and it's like let's see a little bit more nuance with the humans. Let's have a bit of sympathy for the humans for once, for God's sake. Their planet is dying. But also, going into the new one, I'm really excited to see where they're going to go with Quaritch, because I feel like he's not going to have an allegiance to either the humans or the Na'vi. He's probably going to create his own tribe, as it were, or maybe even go it alone and just be this like force to be reckoned with. It could go anywhere, so I actually really look forward to seeing what they're going to do with that. Maybe he'll join the Fire Nation and then lead them, and maybe that's what they're going to do. I don't know. We'll just have to wait and see. But yeah, so I am looking forward to the next one, and yeah, so hopefully it won't be too long. That's my only thing. Hopefully it'll be a nice solid 3 hours will do, not 3 hours 12 minutes, because that 12 minutes just creeps over and it feels like the longest 12 minutes in the world. But anyway, hope you enjoyed this video, guys. Please like, comment, subscribe, hit the notification bell, pick your nose, run, do push-ups, do pull-ups, be healthy, eat an apple, what else? Become a member of the crew on Terradome. I've got crew member access now. If you want to keep up to date on videos, I'm going to try and do more videos, as many videos as I've ever done this year. So please look out for that, and come back soon and enjoy Avatar free when that's out. See you later, guys. Bye.